Hey guys, it's Mr. Eisens here. We're going to have another notes video, this time talking about genetics. We just talked about asexual and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, meaning not sexual reproduction, meaning there's one parent that produces exact copies of itself. Okay, they can do it very quickly, but they struggle whenever environment changes because all their DNA is the exact same. So they don't have any diversity or other options to face obstacles. Whereas sexual reproduction, you have two parents that are going to come together, the sperm and the egg. Okay, dad's going to provide sperm, mom's going to provide egg, and you're going to have offspring that have genes from both dad and mom. So they're going to be different than the parents. Okay, allowing those populations to deal with many other types of issues and problems because they're genetically diverse. They're different. All right, so let's talk about genes, genetics. Okay, let's hop into these notes. Okay, so first off, our first slide. I will say I did not make this slideshow because I think that hair is incredible. Okay. They got hair just like me, but yeah, it's pretty funny. Genetics, some things just aren't meant to be passed on. But basically, genetics is the idea, the study of heredity and how organisms' traits are related. So what happens is we all have our traits, what we look like, curly hair, okay, the complexion of our skin, the amount of hair that we have, facial hair, okay, is all passed down from our parents, okay? And so you can see this is the father and the son, and so he has passed down his curly hair to his son, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about Gregor Mendel, how he's the father of genetics. Pretty cool ideas. But first, let's define a few vocabulary terms, okay? Let's talk about traits. It's a distinguishing characteristic, whether it be curly hair, detached earlobes. You can see the earlobe down there, okay, whereas it's attached to the side of the head. Okay, a very large dog in its fur compared to, these different coats that you can have. A widow's peak. Okay, I have a widow's peak. You can see my hair just kind of juts out just a little bit, looks a little sharper than it does with a straight hairline. Okay, freckles would be a example of a trait. Okay, it's a distinguishing characteristic. All right, heredity. Heredity just means the transfer of traits from parent to offspring. Okay, and so you're going to get half your traits from mom, half your traits from dad. And so what's going to happen is you're going to be unique as an individual or as a child, okay, because you have half your traits from each parent. Okay, let's define chromosomes. A thread-like linear strand of DNA in the nucleus of an animal or plant that carries genes. Okay, genes code for traits, and traits make up who you are. Okay, so genes is just kind of the complex way of saying different parts of DNA. It's a segment of DNA that is going to code for certain traits. Okay, give you your curly hair, your blonde hair, your blue eyes, or your brown eyes, or your whatever skin tone. Okay, so chromosomes are like these large sections of DNA. Okay, and genes are going to be specific to certain traits. Okay, so genes are found on chromosomes. All right, so talking about genes, it's a sequence, okay, a sequence or a part of the DNA that is coded to express a hereditary characteristic, so a trait. All right, so it's a part of the DNA, just a tiny part of it. See how we have different genes on this chromosome? We got one gene here, okay, because it's just this segment of DNA, that's it, that has the information for that gene, whereas this segment has a different gene, okay? And so all we're going to do is extract that gene from the nucleus. We're going to put that in a ribosome where it's going to make proteins to give us the certain trait that we want, okay? A section of a chromosome will be coded for a specific gene. So again, genes are found on chromosomes, okay? Chromosomes have a ton of DNA, and genes are just a specific part of that, a specific sequence of DNA. All right, so DNA, we're just keep going down the list here. All right, DNA is the genetic material. We've talked about it a bunch. Okay, it is organized into chromosomes. So we take that DNA, it looks like a little ladder. It's really spun up very tightly. And so what happens is it's spun up very, 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 very tightly to the point where we make chromosomes out of it. And that's how we store it very effectively. Okay, we can store a lot of DNA in one spot because we ravel it into a chromosome. Okay. In eukaryotic organisms, it transfers genetic characteristics in all life forms from parent to offspring. So we pass down this DNA from parent to offspring, whether it be asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. And so the offspring are always going to resemble their parents in some way. All right, genetic organization. All right, so a eukaryotic cell, pretty sweet because we have a nucleus. Okay, U means true nucleus. So our DNA is going to be in that nucleus. Our DNA is in the chromosome. Okay, as you can see, it's made up of DNA, and these chromosomes are really tightly wound DNA, and segments of that DNA are going to represent genes. Okay, that are going to code for whatever trait. Okay, whereas a prokaryotic cell, pro means no nucleus. Okay, the DNA is free floating and it's just chilling in here, so it can be damaged pretty easily, and so it's not as organized in how it can separate its DNA and its genes. So therefore, these organisms typically are really simple and small. Okay, because they don't have a lot of DNA. Whereas when you organize it in a nucleus, you're able to really have a ton of DNA. Okay, so you got a lot of options. All right, let me just get my picture out of the way. But let's talk about an allele. Okay, we're going to be talking about alleles quite a bit, but basically it's an alternative form of a gene, one allele per genotype. Okay, so what happens, and we're going to talk about genotype here in a second, but an allele is, let's just run through this example here. Okay, alleles of the eye color gene. Okay, so there's an allele for brown eyes and there's an allele for blue eyes. The brown eye allele is a capital B and the blue eye allele is lowercase b. All right, if you have, and we're going to go in more in depth when we start talking about Punnett squares, but you're going to get one of these alleles from mom and one from dad. If you get two lowercase b's, you can have blue eyes. If you get two uppercase b's, you get brown eyes. But if you have one of each, the uppercase b is dominant over the lowercase, and then you're going to have brown eyes. There's no mix of blue and brown. Okay, we're talking about it's one or the other in this case. All right, there are some examples of that, but I don't want to confuse you just yet. All right, so an allele is going to be an alternative form of gene. So you're either going to have curly hair or straight hair. You're going to have brown eyes or blue eyes. You just got two options. Okay, two options is all you get. All right, so dominant versus recessive. Okay, like we said, we got the capital B versus the lowercase b. Capital B is going to win the tiebreaker because it's dominant over recessive. All right, and so dominant means a trait will appear in an offspring if at least one parent contributes the dominant allele. So if you have a capital B, you got to have brown eyes. Okay, but if you don't have a capital B, then it's possible to have two lower cases and have blue eyes. All right, but the dominant means it's going to win. It's going to win all the tiebreakers. Okay, it's represented by an uppercase letter because it's bigger than the lowercase recessive traits. Okay, a recessive trait, a trait marked or masked, usually both parents contribute a recessive allele to the trait. Okay, so the recessive is going to be masked. So basically it's not going to show up unless both parents give recessive. Okay, because you get one from each parent, right? So you get one that is lowercase b from mom and you get the other lowercase b from dad. All right, so just keep that in mind that, remember, these alleles, you get one from each parent. We're going to practice this a bunch, so don't worry too much about it. But dominant, they're always going to win the tiebreaker. And this is kind of how we can see and look at family trees and pedigrees and animals and kind of predict what traits should we expect in offspring. So it's really, really handy to know these. All right. And so we're just going over all of our terms today. But homozygous, homo means the same, remember, whereas hetero means different. Okay, but homozygous means you have two identical alleles. So you have two capital T's or two lowercase t's. Okay, hetero means you have one of each. So you get one capital and one lowercase, one dominant, one recessive. Okay, homozygous recessive means two recessive lowercase t's. I don't know what trait it would be, maybe tall or short. Okay, two capital T's means you're tall. A heterozygous, a capital T and a lowercase t, this capital T is going to be dominant over the lowercase, meaning you're going to be tall. Whereas the only way you're going to be short is if you had homozygous recessive and you had two lowercase t's. Now, obviously, being tall or short is a little bit more complicated than this, but this is how we simplify it down. Okay, so we got three different types of pairs you could have. Homozygous, you got two. You can either have capital, capital, lowercase, lowercase, or you can have one of each. One of each is hetero, meaning of the two, they're both different. All right. So genotype, okay, genotype. All we're talking about is which two alleles do you have? Okay, the genetic makeup of the organism, made up of two alleles, one from each parent. So in this case, a capital A was given by mom and a capital A was given by dad. Their genotype is AA, capital A, capital A. Okay, here, their genotype is capital A, lowercase a. One from mom, one from dad. Okay, one from each parent. Here, their genotype is lowercase a, lowercase a. Now, genotype tells us the phenotype. Okay, so phenotype is the trait that it actually codes for. All right, so capital A, it says right here, codes for yellow. And then capital A is always dominant over lowercase. So yellow is going to be, if there's a tie, then tie goes to the trait of yellow. And then the recessive is going to be green. Okay, so you need to have two lowercases in order to get green. Okay, phenotype, the observable physical appearance. Okay, whether you have blue eyes, curly hair, straight hair, brown eyes, brown hair, blonde hair, tall, short, wrinkled seeds, or any other type of seeds. Okay, it all depends on that is going to be your phenotype. So again, phenotypes are what you actually see, whether it's yellow or it's green, and genotypes are more specific. They're telling you what alleles do you have as an individual. Okay, so now we're going to use all this information to look at Punnett squares. Okay, so Punnett square is a genetic tool that helps us predict the probability of offspring. Okay, what traits are our offspring going to have? What percentage of the time? That's what we're looking for. Okay, so in this example, and these are just examples of what they look like. In this example, okay, if we go back, remember, you needed, never mind. I thought this yellow and green was going to match up with our last example. But basically, we have our green P's are represented by capital A's. Remember, capital A's are dominant, whereas our recessive P's are going to be yellow. They're both lowercase. So each parent has a 50-50 chance of giving one of their alleles. In this case, there's only one option for each of these. And so all the offspring are going to get one capital A from dad, or maybe this is the father and this is the mother, and one lowercase a from mom. This is going to happen no matter what. And so the probability of getting green peas, because the capital A is dominant over the lowercase a, okay, is 100%. Because all these genotypes, heterozygous genotypes, are coding for our green peas. Okay, so we're just going to practice these. And I want you to kind of go through and write them all. Okay, we're going to post answers for you online, guys, on what this should be. But the way that you organize it, okay, is you're going to take this capital R. Okay, let me just exit out. I want you to pause the video and give it your best try here. But I'm going to attempt to help draw for you guys as well. So let me just pull up my video.